Hello everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today we're going to talk about all the series that I am currently reading. So I have a whole spreadsheet and I am currently in the middle of 28 series, which honestly I feel like that's not terrible. But some of these series I haven't picked up in years, but I still plan on finishing them or continuing them at some point in the future. And then some of these I'm like actively reading right now. So let's just go ahead and get on into it. The first series I want to talk about is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Now, this series has 8 books in it, and I have read 7 out of the 8 books, so I have 1 book left, and that is Kingdom of Ash. Now, Kingdom of Ash has over 900 pages, and if you've seen any of my videos, you would know that I hated Empire of Storms. So Kingdom of Ash is very intimidating for multiple reasons for me, but you might be wondering, Keely, why do you want to finish the series if you now hate it? And that is because I want to see it through. I have been reading this series since 2014. I met Sarah J. Maas in 2015, got Throne of Glass signed. I love the first 3 books in this series so much, and then it just goes downhill from there when the Fae are introduced for me. So I really want to finish this series because I've been reading it for so long and it's so nostalgic to me. So I'm hoping to get to this one soon and finish it finally this year. The next series is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, I believe this series has 6 books out and there's gonna be more coming out. I don't know if it's gonna be 1 more or multiple, but I also think it can be broken down into different trilogies because originally when I first started reading the series, it was 3 books. So I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I have only read the first book, Red Rising, and I didn't really care for it that much, but I also was a lot younger, and so I'm hoping to reread the first book, and if I enjoy it, then maybe I will continue reading the series. This is like a sci-fi dystopian kind of world. The first book is very much like adult Hunger Games, but I know that it branches off very far from that, but I am still interested in continuing. I also met Pierce Brown, and so maybe that's why it's pushing me to want to continue the series. Next, I have Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. This series has 4 books in it, and I have read the first 2 books. So this is set in 1800s London, and we follow Audrey Rose, who she is not like your typical girl in the 1800s. She is very into death and science and mortuary science, and she actually shadows her uncle, who is a mortician, and she kind of solves these cases with another guy named Thomas Cresswell. So the first book I enjoyed, but the second book, Hunting Prince Dracula, is one of my favorite books. Absolutely love that book. So I'm very much looking forward to continuing the series because each book takes place in a different setting and a different crime. This next series is one I am not actually sure I'm going to continue, and that is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I haven't officially DNF'd the series yet, but it is possible. I read the first book a few years ago. I believe there are like 4 books in this series, and the first book I really did not enjoy, and it ended on my least favorite trope like of all time. So I am not quite sure I'm going to continue. If I do continue, it's because this is one of those series that I have always wanted to read, and so I kind of just want to see if it gets better or if it's something that can fall in love with, just like all of the other classic YA series. The next series is Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch, and this has 3 books in this kind of companion series. This series follows 3 different love stories, and they are like travel love stories. They're so much fun, and they give you all the Wanderlust vibes, and I absolutely love them. I have read 2 out of the 3 books, so I'm hoping to get to the 3rd book soon. This next series is another series I'm not sure I want to continue, and that is the Legendborn Cycle by Tracy Deonn. So far there are 2 books out in this series, but I'm not sure how many there will be, and I have read the first book, Legendborn. Now, I remember like enjoying it, but I feel like as time goes on, my enjoyment goes down and down and down because this book is so confusing. It is all about Arthurian legend, and I was so confused and I felt like it wasn't explained or developed enough, so I really would like to reread the first one and then decide if I want to continue. The next series is one of my favorite series that I have never heard anyone on BookTube talk about, and the 3rd and final book just came out, and that is The Kinder Poison by Natalie May. So this is a fantasy series with a competition. There are kings and fight to the death, and there's also magical abilities in here, and I absolutely love it. So I have read the first 2 books, and the 3rd one, like I said, just came out, so I am hoping to get to it very soon. The next series is one I have been reading for so long, and that is The Program by Suzanne Young. So this series has 7 books in it, and I have read 4 of the 7, but it has been so long since I read them, I'm going to need to reread from the beginning and then finally continue. This is one of those YA series that came out when I was in high school, and I really did enjoy it. This is what happens when mental illness is kind of an epidemic, and it's kind of set in a dystopian world, and I love dystopia. Next is The Shining by Stephen King. Now this is actually a duology, and the sequel came out decades and decades after the first book, The Shining, and I have read the first book and I have not read Dr. Sleep, but The Shining is one of my favorite Stephen King books, so I'm interested to see how the sequel goes, especially because it was written so much later. Next is You by Caroline Kepnes. So far there are 4 books in this series. The 4th book actually isn't out yet, but it's coming out soon, and I am very much looking forward to it, although I have only read the first one. But I love this series so much. We follow Joe Goldberg, this serial killer and stalker, and it is told in such a way that it seems like he is talking to you, and I love it so much. So I'm interested to see in how these sequels go, and I don't know why I haven't picked them up yet. Next, we have a series that I am all caught up on, but I know that there will be more coming out, and that is the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire. The 8th book just came out earlier this year, and it is one of my favorites, so I have read all 8 books, but once again, I don't know how many there will be. I feel like Seanan McGuire can just keep writing these forever, and I will pick them up every time. The next series is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. Now, this one currently only has 4 volumes out, but I know a 5th volume is coming. I just don't know when, and I believe that is also going to be the last volume. So I am caught up on the series. I've read all 4 volumes so far, and this series is just really cute. It is a graphic novel series, and we follow Nick and Charlie as they are falling in love. But the series also does have some hard-hitting topics. The 4th volume is definitely the darkest and the deepest, but it is my favorite overall, and I have a really great time with the series. Next, we have Cursebreakers by Brigid Kemmerer. This has 3 books in the series, although I believe there might be a novella, but I know there's 3 books. It is a trilogy, and I have read the first book, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and absolutely loved it. So I don't know why I haven't continued yet, but that first book was 5 stars. So good. This is like a Beauty and the Beast retelling where a girl is actually living in Washington, D.C., and she gets transported into a fantasy world and has to help save the kingdom. Next, we have a horror trilogy, and that is Camp Slaughter by Sergio Gomez. This is about a cannibalistic killer, and it is a slasher series. So the second one came out last year, and the 3rd one is coming out sometime, hopefully this year, and I have read the first 2 books in this trilogy and absolutely love them. The insight we get into this killer is really fascinating because we get to see his point of view and also all of the other characters that are dying throughout it. This next series is one that I recently re-added into my currently reading because I didn't know if I would ever continue, but I have recently gotten in the mood to continue that, and that is the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy. I believe there are 4 books in this series, and I have read the first one, The Deal. I read it a few years ago, and I remember really enjoying it, and it was at the time like one of my first like spicy romance books, so I'm interested in continuing now that I've read more of them. Next, we have a new series, so there is only 1 book out, but I know I'm going to continue, and that is the Maze Cutter series by James Dashner. So this book is actually set 73 years after the original Maze Runner series, so we follow some of the descendants of the original characters and as well as some new characters. This first book, I read it at the beginning of this year, and I am struggling to see the point of it, but I will read anything in this Maze Runner series, so I will definitely continue. Next, we have the longest series on my currently reading, so I don't know if I will ever catch up, and that is Black Dagger Brotherhood by J.R. Ward. Now, this one, I believe, has probably close to 30 books in it, and I have only read book 1. This is a vampire paranormal romance series. It is very spicy, and I read the first one years ago, but I loved it, and I really do want to continue. I know each book follows like a new character and a new romance, so I'm interested. I also just love vampires. Next is another quite long series, and that is the Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. I never read this as a child, but I started reading it like last year or the year before, and this series has 12 books in it. I've only read the first 2, but this is one of those series that I cannot read the books too close together because each book is basically the same thing, but it is still so much fun. We follow these siblings, and they are trying to run away from their greedy uncle. I'm still not quite sure if he's actually their uncle. I just know he wants their money. The next three are all manga series, and the first one I want to talk about is The Girl from the Other Side. I believe this has 6 volumes, at least that's what my spreadsheet says, and I have read the first 2. So this is all about a little girl who is living with this monster, and people outside of the village say that if you touch him, you will become a monster yourself, and they're not quite sure why this little girl is like normal and not a monster. But it was so cute and so much fun, so I will eventually continue. Next, I have Full Metal Alchemist, and this is a very long manga series. I am not quite sure how many volumes there are, but I've read the first 13, which I think the first 12 is like the first arc. So I have completed the first arc of this series, and I do really, really want to continue. This series is all about alchemy, and we follow 2 brothers, and they tried to bring their mother back, and something went wrong, and I had a great time reading the first 13 volumes. Of course, my battery died, but moving right along to the next manga series, and that is Death Note. Now, I'm reading the Black Edition, and I believe there are 6 volumes of the Black Edition. I've only read the first volume, but I am so interested in this story. We follow this character named Light, who finds a death god's journal, and he can write down any person's name and they will die. So it is really interesting. It is a battle between good and evil and morals, and I just had so much fun with it. The next series is the Pandava series by Roshni Chokshi. This is under the Rick Riordan Presents imprint, so this is all about Hindu mythology. I believe there's going to be 6 books in this series, and I'm not sure how many are out yet. I think there might be 5, or the 6th one's out. Not quite sure, but I have read the first 2 in this series. It's not my favorite mythology series, but I do have fun picking them up every so often, and I do really want to read all the series under Rick Riordan Presents, so this was the first one that I started. Speaking of Rick Riordan Presents, I am also reading the Stormrunner series by J.C. Cervantes, and this is actually a trilogy. So there are 3 books, and I have read the first 2 books, so I only have 1 left. And this series is all about Maya and Aztec mythology, so this is definitely something I have never heard of before or really looked into, so it's interesting learning about this mythology, and I do like the characters as well. Next, I have the Finley Donovan series by Elle Cosimano. Now, I'm not sure how many books there are going to be in this series because she has said that there could be so many books, but the 3rd book just came out and I have read the first 2. I have the 3rd book on hold from my library, so I'm really looking forward to it. So this follows single mom, Finley Donovan. She's going through a terrible divorce and she needs money. So she is trying to write a book, and she is talking to her agent in a Panera Bread, and someone overhears her and thinks that she is a hit woman. So they hire her to kill that woman's husband. So there are a lot of shenanigans. This is kind of like a cozy mystery. They get up to some crazy, unbelievable things, and it is just so much fun. Next, once again under the Rick Riordan Presents imprint, I have Sal and Gabby by Carlos Hernandez, and this is actually a duology. I have read the first book, so I only need to read the 2nd book. This one I am not super excited about. It was not my favorite book reading the first one. I honestly don't even know what mythology it is because it was so like different and off the rails, and it almost felt more science fiction than mythology, so I am interested to see the 2nd one to see if we get any questions answered. The next series is the 3 Dark Crown series by Kendare Blake. Now, this world has 5 books total. There are 4 books in the main series and then like a novella, so there's 5 stories within this series. I have read the first 2, and this is a young adult fantasy series that is so much fun. So we follow 3 different sisters, and they are triplets, but they grew up in different parts of the kingdom because on their 16th birthday, they have to come together and fight to the death because there can only be 1 queen. Now, each sister has a different magical ability, and it is so fascinating. I love the magic in this world and seeing the unique and different kingdoms. I love it so much, and I can't wait to finish out this series. Next, I have The School Years by Soman Chonani, and this is actually a trilogy, although there are 6 books total in this world, but the 6 books break down into 2 different trilogies, so I'm counting The School Years as 1 trilogy. So I have read the first 2 books, so I have 1 more book to read, and this is a middle grade, like, fantastical series where these 2 girls, they believe one is good and one is evil, and they get taken away to a school for good and evil, and they believe they know where they're going to get placed. However, when they get to the school, they are placed in the opposite school than they think they should be in. So this has very much a fairy tale vibe, and I just had so much fun with the first one. The second one was kind of a letdown, so I'm really hoping the third one brings it all together. And the last series I want to talk about that I'm currently reading is The Eldest Curses by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. This is one of Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter Chronicles books, and this one follows Magnus and Alec and their adventures and the beginning of their relationship and their love, and I love them so much. They are one of my favorite couples of all time, and I just read the first book. I believe this series is going to have 3 books in it, and the first book was so much fun, and I just really love them together. So those are all the series that I am currently reading. Let me know how many series that you are in the middle of. If you keep track of them, I would love to know. But that is it for this video. If you have made it this far, go ahead and leave the iguana emoji. I don't know why, don't ask me, that just like popped in my head. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!